Hi, it's Larold, and this is the first video we're making in a series that will either run until the Midnight Alpha is announced, or we run out of tanks to talk about. And what we're going to do here is a little bit of wish casting for the coming WoW expansion Midnight, and what we want to see for the class design. I've been playing my Brewmaster Monk again lately, nothing fancy, just doing some Mythic Zeros and Lobby keys. The character's very badly geared, although getting better pretty quickly. I can see why it's rising in popularity this season. The damage is good, the tankiness is a lot better than it has been in previous seasons, and it is surprisingly fun. With that being said, it's still not amazing. It's 4th place in a 6-way popularity contest, right? There's a lot of room for improvement. So we're going to offer some suggestions on how we hope Blizzard will make the class stronger. That's pretty much it. So let's get into it, but first be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Join our Discord as well. We're over 1,300 members and still growing strong, so come join the community. Alright, so the first thing we'd really like to see is an improvement to Explosive Keg, turning it into a better AoE crowd control skill. It's the classic meme, Lord, I've seen what you've done for others, and now could you do the same for me? Prot Warrior's got an AoE silence. Vengeance Demon Hunter and Prot Paladin still have great AoE interrupt tools. Why not Brewmaster Monk? Why not Explosive Keg? Obviously, Explosive Keg is still like a big AoE offensive cooldown, so it's not something you would really want to hold for a lot of situations, like hold it for an AoE interrupt, but just to have that extra little bit of interrupt power as something that's like readily available would be huge, because right now there is a huge proliferation of AoE interrupts going around among tanks. There are 3 tanks that have them, and there's a very clear divide between the 3 tanks that have AoE silences, Prot Warrior, Prot Paladin, and Vengeance Demon Hunter, and the 3 that don't. I realize Blood DK technically has an AoE interrupt, but it is really hard to reach in their tree, so effectively they don't have one. And the difference in popularity between the 3 haves and the 3 have-nots is something like 10-20% between the 2 ends of the spectrum. Alright, so that's kind of wish number 1. The second is a change to the 3% increased physical damage debuff that monks get, Mystic Touch. It just stinks. It is a meaningless buff in Mythic Plus groups. For caster groups, it literally won't do anything, but even for groups that are fully stacked up to do as much physical damage as possible, it's a very small amount of damage, it's 3% at most. Even the most physical damage-oriented specs, other than maybe warriors, do some mix of physical and magic damage. Blizzard did attempt to increase the Mystic Touch buff in patch 11.2, and they got a lot of negative feedback from players, and they ultimately chickened out. Here's some even more negative feedback from us. The whole debuff buff system is terrible. It's boring, the bonuses are so small that you can't really even tell if they're there in dungeon groups, but they're multiplicative with each other. This means your raid group is at a competitive disadvantage if they're not adhering to the extremely annoying system of stacking all the different 3% and 5% bonuses in order to make sure that there's a complete rainbow of class colors in the raid frames. Everybody hates it, raid leaders hate it, people hate being forced to play mage, whatever, some class that they don't want to play instead of something else they enjoy. Bring the player, not the class was a philosophy that Blizzard had like 12, 15 years ago, and people really liked it. They like to make fun of it now that they're forced to bring a class instead of a player, and our solution, once again, is just to throw this buff-debuff system in the trash. Just kill the whole idea. It's not good now, it wasn't good in the past, teardrops in the rain, time to die. But since Blizzard probably isn't going to do that, here's another idea. Just drop the boring damage bonuses like the Monk and DH debuffs that are so small that they're barely noticeable, and replace them with more interesting group utility, like the small move speed buff in the Monk tree. Then Blizzard needs to amp those up to actually feel like something. The issue right now with the damage bonuses is that they don't feel like much. Getting 1% move speed isn't really going to fix it either. But going from 3% more physical damage to 10% more move speed, that's going to feel pretty good. It's going to feel pretty good for everyone, whether they're casters or melee or whatever. Everyone would like that. Alright, the next thing that we really would like to see is a buff to Breath of Fire. Right now the damage is bad and the damage reduction it provides is too low, to the point that it's not even being used in the standard rotation or talent setup at all. It has been replaced by Rushing Jadewind, and that's probably the biggest positive of Breath of Fire being awful. There is room in the rotation and on your action bar to use Rushing Jadewind again, and that does feel pretty good. Brewmaster without Rushing Jadewind as a useful skill kind of feels bad. Brewmaster with Rushing Jadewind as a useful skill kind of feels good. That might sound like an oversimplification, but it's mostly real. The issue here is that Breath of Fire sits right on the cusp of having almost no impact. 5% damage reduction is basically the smallest amount you can provide to players that really gives any sort of meaningful amount of contribution to your defenses. And at the current state of affairs, it's not even worth taking. The damage that Breath of Fire does is terrible, and it really just needs a shot in the arm. It probably needs to be more like 10% damage reduction and also double the amount of damage that it currently is. The issue is that adding that in would then force Rushing Jadewind back out. There's just too many keybinds going around for Brewmaster Monk right now, and something has to give. I'm not 100% certain what that is, but the feeling of having Rushing Jadewind is pretty nice. Losing Rushing Jadewind to Breath of Fire would not be great, so Rushing Jadewind needs a reason to stick around in the next expansion, while Breath of Fire also becomes useful once again. Whether Rushing Jadewind provides some defensive value or just replaces Breath of Fire, that seems like the simplest option. Or maybe it just does a ton more damage, whatever, who cares, but giving players a reason to use Rushing Jadewind and the rotational space to actually use it by getting rid of something else to make room for Breath of Fire is really what Blizzard needs to do. Alright, then the fourth thing that really needs to change is Master of Harmony. Right now it really has no identity, it's just an uninteresting spec, and the current tier set bonuses really haven't done anything to help with that at all. You get some extra damage that heals you and nearby allies. Pretty boring. Kind of a perfect summary for what Master of Harmony is all about, though. It does some damage when you press Celestial Brew. You get some extra damage from your single target skills as Cleave. It's just not a very thematic or interesting concept. There's definitely a concept going on with Shadowpan. You get these big flurries of attacks, you get this cooldown reduction on Weapons of Order, and this extra power out of Weapons of Order with the current tier set bonuses, and nothing really thematic like that is going on with Master of Harmony. You get a damage proc. My god, it's a trinket as an entire hero spec. There is some potential for the new talents to expand on Master of Harmony. It's the hero spec that I personally would like to be more interesting, but really it just needs a full-scale redesign right now. It isn't awful, but it isn't good. It's also kind of boring. Boring and middle of the road is a terrible combo. It's almost worse than just being bad. There's not even any sort of fun kitsch value in playing something that's just kind of mediocre. So those are the things that we think need to change, but we did want to also touch on some of the things that have really surprised us in the current state of the class, and those would be the aforementioned Rushing Jadewind. The fact that that has made its way back into the rotation and the talent setup is a positive. Rushing Jadewind does feel really good, and definitely Blizzard needs to make it so that it's balanced and tuned and such that it is still part of the rotation going forward. It really feels good to be back. Nizao has also greatly exceeded expectations. He's really working very well. He does good damage, but he isn't reliant on, like, very dumb, degenerate gameplay where you go intentionally stand and fire or turn your back to bosses or sit down on the ground to get crit in order to make him do more damage. He just works in a way that's kind of good and smart, and putting more eggs into the Nizao basket actually would kind of work. That would make sense. It's been working really well in this patch. Kinda can't believe I'm saying it, but Shadowpan and Weapons of Order feel really good. The new tier set bonus works really well with them, and it's just a really good feeling to play with Shadowpan as a hero spec and Weapons of Order as an offensive cooldown. They just work really nicely together. And finally, I think the biggest thing that's really working super well for Brewmaster Monk in Season 3 of The War Within is Celestial Infusion. This was a new talent that was added in patch 11.2, and it basically just turns Celestial Brew into Ignore Pain. It lasts like 15 seconds instead of 7. It doesn't absorb 100% of damage. I think it only does 30%. It doesn't absorb any more damage either, but it spreads it out so that it lasts longer, and it's just really, really effective at smoothing out damage in Mythic Plus. It works super well in conjunction with Stagger, and it just feels really great. It actually works well in Raid too, for what that's worth. And it does kind of put a spotlight on just how bad Celestial Brew is, but, you know, that probably needs some kind of buff or redesign, but Celestial Infusion is here, and it's doing a really good job of making Monk feel a lot tankier for the first time in a long time. So that pretty much covers it. Brewmaster Monk is in pretty good shape right now, better than usual at this point in an expansion, that's for sure, but there is still a lot of room to grow in Midnight. Alright, that's it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and join the Skipping Sleep Studio Discord and become part of our community. And finally, thank you to all of our channel members. If you want to support us so we can keep making more WoW content, become a channel member or come boost our Discord. Thanks for watching. Bye.